Hi everyone, I'm Jim Gray, the CEO of iRecover Treatment Centers and Behavioral Health Clinics. Welcome to our STEP series. I'm going to be breaking down the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, talk about the iRecover program and how we do it, and tell you some of my own personal stories and suggestions. And when you're sitting in treatment and you're getting clean and sober and watching these videos, and you're starting to perhaps struggle with the action of a program, remember where you come from. Remember, you wanted to change your life. And of course, remember who phoned who. So hi everyone, I'm Jim Gray, owner of iRecover, and I'd like to welcome you to video 9 of our iRecover educational series. Today we're going to talk about the 12 steps. Father Martin said it takes something special to understand the alcoholic and something a little more special to help him get sober. Bill Wilson said AA did not invent these steps, they simply discovered them. I discovered them over 25 years ago. And the way I discovered them is I drank myself to the point that my wife left me and took my kids. And the typical story that most of you in this room have, a very similar story. But what happened to me is I got involved in AA. I went to AA every day, and at one of the AA meetings we talked about, this one fella come up to me and said, there's a day group here in the town I was in at that time. You should come over there and go through the steps. And that's how I got into AA. And it's worked miracles. You know, they talk about miracles in Alcoholics Anonymous. You're looking at one here. Because when I come in here, I was a beaten man. I had lost my children, lost my family, and that's just the way it was. So I started working the program, and after a year, I got my children back. 3 young boys at that time. They were 6, 8, and 10, and they're still with me. I can't get rid of them after all these years, but that's just the way it is with kids. But you know, 10 years into sobriety, I come down to Palm Springs on a deal, and I went through what they call a table meeting here, which was another awakening and going through the steps again, and got me back involved. And then a couple of years later, my youngest son got hit by an impaired driver, and it almost killed him. You know, there's nothing more devastating to a parent than getting a call from the police at 2 in the morning and saying your son was in an accident and it doesn't look good. You know, alcohol, even though at that point I drank for 15 years, come back and bit me in the ass again. So what I learned from that is that alcoholism will always be with me. It's what I do, how I think. So from that point I decided, how can I get drunk drivers off the road? And that's how iRecover was born. I bought an old prison from the government and started working on it. And here we are 10 years later, and I've got centers in California, Newfoundland, British Columbia, Alberta, and the business is growing, unfortunately. You know, I'd like my business to close from lack of people. But that's my story, and that's how I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and how I found the power to stay sober, and it was by helping other people. AA started in 1935 by Bill Wilson, a stockbroker, and Dr. Bob Smith, a surgeon, in Akron, Ohio. They come up with the simple steps to living a sober life that has helped hundreds of thousands of people to get well. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Powerlessness suggests an absolute term with no gray areas, no ifs and or buts. You know, it's unpleasant to totally surrender to the fact that I can't handle alcohol. It handles me. Oddly enough, the alcoholic surrenders to gain victory, losing the battle to win the war. It's an acknowledgement that if you do not stop drinking, the drinking will stop you. The strength of the alcoholic lies in the ability to admit this weakness. The success of the next 11 steps depends directly on the depth and seriousness of your step 1. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. If I do not have the power in me to stop drinking, it must come from outside of me. The insanity of the alcoholic is not what he does when he or she drinks. It's the times when he is completely sober and picks up the first drink. This is the irrational behavior that is referred to as the insanity of the alcoholic. The alcoholic is insane to choose to take a drink or drug that's killing him. Therefore, the alcoholic needs to find the power to reverse this from outside of himself to relying on others and to a higher power, something bigger than himself. This could be God, the group, your family, that you consider greater than yourself. Step 3 had made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understood Him. My philosophy did not work, so I need to shift my philosophy over to another that does work. Half measures avail us nothing. That comes from a big book. I need a total overhaul of myself, my thinking and my life. Now step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Why the word moral? The disease is not immoral, but the subsequent behavior we use always is. This leads to the guilt from the past that needs to be resolved for the alcoholic to be able to move forward. Self-worth needs to be restored in order to improve and recover. You know, it's a tough thing to do to face our flaws, but we also discover our strength during this process. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. This allows the alcoholic to find the real self and share that with somebody else. This is an effective way of being honest and sharing the burden of guilt we may carry from past transgressions. We have to be humble and honest in this step to resolve the past once and for all. The psychological value of complete honesty with another person is immense and is extremely liberating. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all our defects of character. This is where the alcoholic is asked to use common sense and an intellect over these emotions, thinking before acting. We need to let go of the past behaviors and our defects of characters and find new ways to behave in a positive and productive manner. Step 7, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. You'll have the strength and the opportunity to exercise, better decision making. Trust in your higher power. Step 8, made a list of persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. The key here is willing to make amends. Some we cannot make, and people do not have to accept our amends anyhow. You must give it. We will also need to be sure to check if by making amends we may harm somebody. So step 9, we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. This is a daily task for each participant. Discuss the daily meetings in the center. Every night at 9 o'clock, you're going to be doing this. So remember that, step 10. So now step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. This is important, not to be self-reliant as we were in active addiction. And finally, we have step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, to practice these principles in all our affairs. Then, if we want to keep this, we got to go out there and do service work. We got to help other people. Service work is emptying the ashtrays, making coffee, whatever it is to help the club room, help the other alcoholic, but service is so important. If you don't get involved with helping other people, you won't be able to keep your sobriety. You might have it short term, but chances are, if you don't do some kind of service work, however it is, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but get out of yourself. How can I help a suffering alcoholic that's going to help me when I help them. That's a great part of this. When you're helping somebody else, it also helps yourself. So that's the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I hope you learned something in there. If you can live by those steps, if you can just try to live by those steps, it's very hard, but you can do it. I've done it, so I know it works. No, I'm Jim Gray from iRecover. This is video 9. I'll see you down the road for video 10.